Sergio Perez has dropped a bombshell on Red Bull, casting doubt over his Red Bull future in a statement which sent shockwaves across the paddock and poured gasoline on an already raging fire in form of talks about his spot in the team. This is the first time that we see him do this, and it seems like the partnership with Verstappen is slowly getting to his head after not completing his promise at the start of the season. What will this mean for Red Bull, and more importantly, who could potentially replace Perez? Starting the season as a potential champion, Perez was only 6 points behind Max Verstappen after his second victory in Azerbaijan. However, the Mexican racer now finds himself in a precarious position with continuous criticism of his performances. The ongoing rumors about Perez come from an apparent division within the Red Bull team, and while Helmut Marko seems open to the possibility of a driver change as soon as the next season, Christian Horner, the head of Red Bull, strongly opposes such a move. Speaking to Kleine Zeitung after the summer break, 80-year-old Marko said of his driver's future, "Nothing is 100% certain in Formula 1. It just doesn't exist." He doubled down on that, saying that while for now Perez has a contract, as it is not a job guarantee but a contractual one. That opens the door for Perez to be pushed down to AlphaTauri or even paid not to race. But while his team boss Christian Horner has at least been giving him more assurances, adamant Perez will be a Red Bull driver next season, it seems Perez is ready to take matters into his own hands next year. "I think that now, with the season we've had, it's important in the next races to be in an environment where I feel I can contribute." Formula.Uno quotes him as having told DAZN. And if that place in 2024 isn't here, then we have to look for alternatives. Recent comments confirm that Sergio Perez believes 2024 might be his last year with Red Bull, and although he's open to discussing 2025 and beyond, he's also prepared for the possibility of his contract not being renewed if he doesn't feel he can offer more. Perez's struggles are reminiscent of Valtteri Bottas, who realized he couldn't consistently surpass Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, and this is a sign that Perez recognizes his diminishing role, impacting both Red Bull and the larger F1 community. While Perez is committed to Red Bull for 2024, many in the F1 circle as well as fans already predicted that this might be his final season with a championship-winning team, and the prevailing belief is that Red Bull designs cars suited for Max Verstappen's driving style, which Perez finds challenging. This was evident when Perez struggled to keep up with the evolving car developments that drift from his preferences, and while Perez managed to win earlier this season in locations like Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan, Verstappen's continuous improvements made him an increasingly tough competitor. Notably, during the race in Baku, Verstappen made in-cockpit adjustments that significantly improved his performance, which involved brake bias, differential, and engine braking torque maps, and as Verstappen grew and aligned even more with the team's car, Perez's edge diminished. Given the Verstappen-centric environment at Red Bull, Perez's consideration of a potential exit is hardly surprising. While he is contemplating his future in F1 for the 2025 season, especially as the remaining options for 2024 seem limited if Red Bull opts out early, because for 2024 only 3 teams have vacancies: Alfa Romeo Sauber, Williams and AlphaTauri. The possibility of Perez joining AlphaTauri, Red Bull's second team, appears slim. Meanwhile, Williams seems to be leaning towards retaining Logan Sargent. However, a nostalgic comeback for Perez with Sauber, the team where he began his F1 journey in 2011, would send shockwaves in the racing community. However, the most tantalizing reunion would be with Aston Martin. Perez saw his peak performance years with the then-named Force India Racing Point, only to be replaced post-2020 to accommodate the team owner's son, Lance Stroll. So imagine the poetic turn of events if Perez reclaimed Stroll's position, more so when Stroll's performance hasn't matched up to what Perez might have achieved with Aston Martin. Yet, the most plausible outcome is Perez sticking with Red Bull for at least one more year, and what happens after that will be the highlight of the next F1 silly season. If Perez leaving does turn out to be the case, what would his options be? Earlier this year, before Max Verstappen increased his advantage over him so drastically, Perez said, "With a family at home in Mexico, I wouldn't be doing this if I did not believe I could win the World Championship. Being Verstappen's teammate comes with challenges, and Verstappen's outstanding talent has the potential to overshadow a fellow driver, which might impact their reputation in the market. So if teams perceive Perez as a slower driver behind Verstappen, his prospects with another top-tier team could all but disappear." Reflecting on his deep commitment to the sport and the reasons he's previously stated for racing, Perez may choose a graceful exit, celebrated as a multiple Grand Prix champion and a national legend, which in my opinion is more important. Meanwhile, if Red Bull is considering a replacement for Perez, Lando Norris seems to be on the radar. With Norris's expressed interest in partnering with Verstappen and the respect he's garnered from Red Bull's leaders, including Helmut Marko and Christian Horner, he emerges as a strong contender. Though Red Bull has talents like Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, Norris's current performance might place him at the forefront. Norris and Verstappen enjoy a close friendship off-track, which could be another reason to pair them up at Red Bull in the future. I can happily say that Max is probably one of the best drivers ever in the history of F1, Norris said. It would be great to work alongside someone like that. It's definitely something I would be open to in the future and see where I can really stand against him. I never raced against him until I was into F1, but in karting I already knew him reasonably well. 2012 or 2013 was the first time I got to meet him and get to know him, so I've been able to witness what he's doing. And I think it's not just that he's in a good car. I think no matter what car he's in, he'd be able to perform at a similar level. Norris even joked about a different route to becoming teammates, saying, "I've invited him to McLaren the other day, so if he wants to come and sign, he's very welcome." Norris will be able to compete with Verstappen, although I think the relationship between them might even become slightly toxic pretty quickly despite their friendship. They should just stick with Perez as a clear number 2 driver, particularly since Red Bull are so dominant at the moment anyway, as improving on Perez only becomes important when the other teams start to catch up. And with Verstappen being able to win the Constructors' Championship on his own these days, it makes sense for Red Bull not to bring in a driver that could realistically challenge him. And in the case that other teams catch up, that driver should still be competent, which Perez is. Perez has stated that he cannot live without motorsport, and this reminds me of the Bottas situation an awful lot. While Bottas transitioned to Alfa Romeo, a move that was more about staying relevant than gunning for the championship, it remains to be seen where Perez might land. The Red Bull seat undoubtedly reinvigorated Perez's passion for the sport, but as things stand, his time there may be drawing to a close, either from his own choice or Red Bull's. Is there an offer out there attractive enough to keep Perez from turning towards a more harmonious personal-professional balance? He must determine if the appeal of F1 is still strong enough to keep him on the grid, as his aspiration is clear. He wants that thrill of victory and a challenging endeavor. Yet finding such an opportunity could be hard to say the least. When Perez's chapter with Red Bull concludes, he may either depart from F1 for good or choose a less prominent team on the grid. His decision to persist in the sport hangs on what kind of a step he's willing to take. If he decides to bow out due to a lack of fitting prospects, it would be unfair to judge him for that choice. For me, this is Checo finally admitting to himself that his career will probably not include a world title. This is excruciatingly hard for a racer, especially at this level, and especially in the kind of team that is Red Bull, seeing the end of a career that somehow held the unfortunately false promise that he could be a world champion. He has had a career we can only dream of, if we could even perceive a run like his. That being said, I would absolutely love to see him in IndyCar, for example. He would be so welcomed in so many ways if he's at all inclined to do that, which only time will tell. What do you think? Would Perez continue racing after 2024, or do we see a retirement on the horizon? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we will see you in the next video.